Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. Feedback is immensely important. Feel free to reach out. The way to do so will be provided for you. Also, I have a Shopify link if you're interested in customized tumblers, t-shirts, and also you have suggestions, ideas about my shop. Feel free to click on the link and check my merchandise out. Alright, so some of the audio platforms I'm on Spreaker, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Deezer, just to name a few. Okay, so it's Friday, so I'm going to focus in on all of you. This week with the subject of language, I'm going to talk about Israel and the aspects of Hebrew language and how that is implemented, and the value and the importance. And I appreciate all the listeners out there who listen to me from Israel. Here we go. All right, I'm going to jump into my thoughts before I get into the facts of the matter of everything. My goodness. There is so much to say about the aspects of Israel and the implement of how all the influence Israel has into our world. Whether it has to do with the aspects of the bedrock of Israel, with the Christian aspects of it, and the Jewish aspects of it. And it's just so immensely powerful to think about all the rich history that is with Israel. When you think about the aspects of Jesus living and breathing, walking, being there. And you think about all of the different elements and the New Testaments, all of that. Just, it's mind-blowing. And also with the severity of what happened with the crucifixion and the aspects of belief and continue to believe and going forward and bringing the spirit of Jesus Christ and the spirit of the foundation of Christianity unto the world. Now also with the aspects of the Jewish faith and the bedrock of that too, and the flourishment and the traditions of when you get into the aspects of the Israelites, and then you get in the aspects of everything that is fundamental into the Torah, and then the belief systems within that, and also the dark, sad tragedy of the Holocaust, and how that implement the aspects of the importance of this common denominator here. Now, it's very important to understand these aspects too, of how this translates to both of the imagery translates a lot into the world in which we're living in today. Now, the aspects of imperialism, the aspects of socialism, the aspects, how does that represent itself in our cultural landscape? Think about it like this. So, when you have the ideology of saying oh, you have privilege just because you're white. There's no merit to anything that you have actually done to be a productive citizen in society. That's one count that's stripped against having a tarred and warped sense of reality. Second example. Oh, you can be beautiful at any size. It doesn't matter. You don't have to actually, get yourself involved in being disciplined with exercise and diet. Diet is actually something that is a curse instead of a help to you. You don't have to fall prey into these social norms of being healthy and being beneficial to fortifying the rest of your life. No, you can just sit back and say, I am, yes, there is healthy attitudes and saying that I am enough. That's a difference between saying I am enough and the benefit of saying, well, yes, I am enough, but I can always improve on myself. But they want you to believe with the body positivity movement, you don't have to improve on yourself. It's just what you're bound to be. No matter what you do, it's just what you're bound to be. And then anybody else who wants to improve themselves, who says otherwise, they're the enemy. 3. Oh, I'm so oppressed. Even though I've had so many multitudes of opportunities that my ancestors did not have and they worked to strive to have before me. Whether that be the African American experience, whether it be and then get into the aspects of being the forefront runner, but that's not so prevalent as with African Americans of today. But with the disdain of saying Latinx, why would you want to, remove yourself from the rich history that Latin American people have contributed? That's ridiculous, because that's something that, really in the Latin American community, they would be against. Now, dig deeper into this. How is this any different into the aspects of the harsh reality of what was going on with the aspects of what happened in the Holocaust? It's one of those things that you really got to look at before it becomes a slippery slope into that. And then it's not too far off from BLM screaming, saying, we as a nation are so awful to our brothers. Our brother and sisters, whether, African American, but brother and sister can be anybody united together. But in this case, African Americans, right? Well, that's farther from the truth. And then to emit such violence and chaos at the cost of it. So I'm going to end on this. It's immensely appreciative to have sincere respect for other cultures, and to actually have the benefit of seeing and learning from history how that relates to the world in which we live in. And I mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it even more so now in the aspects of what's going on in our society and how the implements of Israel and Islam, but particularly with Israel, and how that is fundamental in our social political world landscape of today. So when I was a freshman in high school, I took a theater class. You know how you take the electives, and I just chose theater because I thought it was pretty interesting. And so our teacher decided to take us to the Holocaust Museum in Houston. And you know, when you read things, and then you talk about it, it's not quite the same when you go and actually hear and listen and see the story of somebody that's experienced that. So this woman, she sat down and she told us everything that she went through, and she was a girl at the time when she was experiencing this unimaginable horror. And the hope in the end that she had, and she was expressing to us that always understand that just because you go through something so tragic and it seems like there's no end in sight, there is a way if you hold on to hope, if you hold on to that, and you have the stability of belief, in your family instills that in you, and that cannot be taken away from you. And it was just something to really consider, and it changed the rest of my life of really understanding and seeing that just hearing what someone has to actually honestly say about something is way more valuable than what is passed on by somebody else. Somebody said this, that, and the other. Oh, so it must be true. It's just like that hearsay, gossip, bullcrap. When you wrap yourselves in gossip and everything else, and that becomes your whole identity, what kind of sense of reality is that? So, with this said, I'm going to get into the aspects of the facts of Hebrew language and tradition. Here we go. All right, and of course, sources will be provided for you in this episode. Okay, here we go. All right. Oh, sorry. No, okay. This has to be it here. Yes. All right, so I'm going to read the AI, and then I'm going to dig in deeper into a source to also explain more. So it says the origin of language in Israel is rooted in the ancient Canaanite language, with Hebrew emerging as a distinct dialect from the Northwest Semitic group during the early first millennium, the BCE to be exact. So the earliest known example of written Hebrew dates back to the 10th century BC, such as the Gezer calendar and the inscriptions found on pottery fragments. And this is from the archaeological sites in Israel. So these early forms of Hebrew were spoken by the ancient Israelites who developed their language from the broader Canaanite linguistic milieu, with the evidence of their persistent appearance in the 13th century in the Cisjordan highlands. So the language evolved further during the period of the entitled monarchy during under Kings David and Solomon. And so, you know, how this is really interesting, the aspects of how what is written in faith scripture relates into the historical sense of what was actually going on. And so that merges the gap between the aspects of how, when you get into the realm of everything, or you get into the mainstream aspects of discrediting people who have spiritual faith, maybe take a second look at the aspects of what is historically written about it, and then come back and think about that. All right, so, and it became the primary language of the kingdom of Judah. So Hebrew was used for religious, literary, and administrative purposes. The majority of the Hebrew Tanakh, composed in biblical Hebrew, a form that flourished around the 6th century in BCE during the Babylonian captivity. All right, so although Hebrew was gradually connected to the Aramaic as the spoken language of the region beginning around the 3rd century of BCE, it remained a vital linguistic and literary language for Judaism and Samaritism. So the language continued to be used in religious contexts, including temple services and synagogue worship, which were connected in Hebrew as evidenced by reference in the New Testament. So the modern revival of Hebrew as a spoken language began in the late 19th century. It was spearheaded by, and forgive me for the pronunciation, Elazar ben Huda, who dedicated his life to restoring Hebrew as a living and everyday language. This linguistic revival led to the establishment of Hebrew as the official language of the State of Israel upon its founding in 1948. So marking its return to the native language of millions of people, today modern Hebrew is the primary language of Israel, using the government, education, media, and daily life, which, while classical Hebrew remains central to religious study and the with also an intention to that with religion. All right, so let me go to this. So the official language of Israel. So, and it says, this is, of course, the source will be provided for you. So, this is by the International Fellowship of Christian and Jews. So, Hebrew's official language, Hebrew in Israel. Modern Hebrew is the main language in Israel and became the first official language of the Holy Land when the Jewish state was first established as an independent country. So Hebrew is the language of the Judaism in the Bible, and its origin has been traced back to 1250 BC. So in Israel, it is used in the government, schools, media, and as I said, street signs and in everyday conversations. In fact, all Israel schools require it for learning. So Hebrew as a language. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and it is written and read from left to right. Right to left. To make things even more interesting, Hebrew readers open their books the opposite way English speakers do. It's also important to note that Hebrew is also written without vowels. Sounds pretty challenging, but all it takes is a little practice to get the hang of it. And of course you have a thirst for knowing other languages. And that goes without saying. Just practice really improves your input on a lot of things. So the history of Hebrew. The Hebrew language is thousands of years old and has evolved throughout its history. It's believed that Hebrew was first spoken by Moses. Moses is known for writing the first 5 books of the Old Testament, also known as the Torah. In Hebrew, at the time, Hebrew was considered the language of the Jewish people. So the first known example of written Hebrew is a fragment of the Hebrew Bible dating back to the 10th century BCE. The language continued to be used for scholarly and literary means. The use of Hebrew as a language rose and fell many times throughout its time, just like the history of the Jerusalem. So resulting in different variations of Hebrew over time, and these were characterized as biblical Hebrew, and the medieval Hebrew, the Rabbinic Hebrew, and today's modern Hebrew. So Rabbinic Hebrew, goes before medieval Hebrew. So what is modern Hebrew? At one point in time, Hebrew was considered a dead language due to it not being a spoken language for more than 1,800 years or 1,800 years. But Hebrew began to revive on October 13th of 1881 when, again, as I mentioned, when Eliezer Yedaya and his friends agreed to only speak Hebrew in their conversations. Then Hidayah was a proud member of the Zionist movement and dreamed of a better future for Jewish people. His mission was to bring Jews back to their roots by moving to their native land and relearning their native language. This idea gained traction among prominent Zionists, and 67 years later, modern Hebrew became the national language of Israel. So, modern Hebrew consists of previous historical layers of Hebrew language that evolved throughout the years and also incorporates new words and meanings to accommodate the modern world. And just like any other language, it also borrowed modern terms from other languages. So modern Hebrew has now been fully revived with more than 9 million people speaking Hebrew around the world. So Hebrew language programs in Israel. When immigrants arrived in Israel, they quickly noticed how important it is for them to learn the Jewish state official language. All of their important documents are in Hebrew, including their passports, rental leases, bills, etc. So not to mention everyone in Israel speaks Hebrew in conversation, so Hebrew plays a large part on the all means immigrants' initial culture shock, which was an initial culture shock. So finding a way to learn it becomes a priority. So Israel has a variety of programs and classes of Almin. So the government subsidized the first semester of classes for its immigrants to help them absorb into the country, and the schools for Hebrew called the Opan, which means teaching or instruction in Hebrew. So if you're interested in learning some of the new Hebrew, it says you can go check this out. So additional languages that are spoken in Israel. And before I end and talk about these additional languages, see, this is also prominent in aspects of the differences of countries, of societies that are very sustainable throughout the years, because it's prevalent in Israel that you must, if you want to live, if you want to be a part of our culture, you must have the respect to learn how to speak the language. And that's very prominent in the aspects of getting people to understand that there is a respect into certain things. And if you don't have respect into other people's culture and you don't want to, immerse yourself into that culture, then you should not, you should not be involved in our way of life. You should just find somewhere else to go. And so that's why it's very important to relate this back to me as being American and in the American values, it's very important for people to understand this. There are people who say, "Oh, it's so destructive to enforce the way, the American way, that everyone must speak English." Well, okay, if you're just here just to visit, that's different. You can at least if you're just here to visit, you can at least take the time to understand the American culture, because why would you want to visit if you're disdain or you don't care to do so? And then there's a big difference in the aspects of also, sorry about that, I'm getting notifications by my children of what's going on at school, which is a good notification. So, and then 10 more times over, why wouldn't you want to learn and respect the language if you intend to live here? Why would you want to go about things the right way? Become a citizen, do these things. And there's something to be said about that. All right, so the additional language. So Arabic. Arabic is the second most common language in Israel. It is spoken natively by Israeli Muslims, Christians, Druze, and Jews who are originally from Arab nations. So Arabic is used on Israel's multilingual street signs, advertising, store names, and around the country. So about 20% of Israel's population natively speak Arabic. Arabic is taught in many Israeli schools, and is also a part of training for specific branches of the Israeli Defense Force, or the IDF. So the IDF uses it as a resource to help soldiers in the West Bank communicative aspects with the civilian population and the strength of military ties with Arab countries in the Middle East. So Hebrew is also very similar to Arabic, since they are both Semitic languages. Despite having different alphabets and scripts, they have comparable grammar systems and many similar words. For example, for the pronunciation again, salama, and Arabic is shalom. And Hebrew both mean hello and peace. Salama, shalom. Okay. So Yiddish. Yiddish is, and from what I understand, this is I'll go more in depth, but from what I understand, it is kind of like a slang sort of. So Yiddish is a combination of Hebrew and medieval German, and is the primary language of the Ashkenazi Jews. So today, Yiddish is one of the majority languages in Israel, and is spoken by Eastern European Jews who immigrated to Israel. At its peak, Yiddish was spoken by millions of Jews all over the world, but sadly, the victims of the Holocaust, where the majority of the world's Yiddish speakers, was causing the near extinction of the language. Yiddish is presently being revived among the ultra-Orthodox populations living in New York and parts of Israel. Russian is, believe it or not, happens to be a non-official language in Israel, spoken by over 20% of the population. This started between 1986 and 2006. So about 979,000 Soviet Jews immigrated to Israel, significantly boosting the overall population of Jews in the Holy Land. In order to accommodate the immigrants, Israel's government and many businesses often provided information in Russian. So the massive immigration brought thousands of native-speaking Russians and changed the language-scape for years to come. So after Germany and the United States, Israel has the world's third largest number of native Russian speakers living outside of former Soviet Union territory, and the highest as a percentage of the population. In the future, Israel's Russian-speaking population is likely to continue to grow. So English. Many tourists wonder if they can use English when they're visiting Israel, and the answer is yes. Not only are the Israelis required to learn English as a second language, but many native English-speaking immigrants also live in Israel. In fact, English was the official language of Israel during the British Mandate era from the end of World War I until the State of Israel was established in 1948. So, French. With the rise of anti-Semitic aspects in France over the last 2 decades, a large percentage of French Jews have moved to Israel. This has led to French being one of the many languages spoken in Israel, additionally to French also being spoken by many Moroccans, Algerians, and Tunisian Jews. French is also taught in many Israel schools and universities due to the rise of immigration. Only 2% of Israelis are native French speakers, but that number is expected to increase as the anti-Semitic aspects of this sadly continues to worsen in France. And it's something that's a harsh reality to understand about the aspects of how, discrimination is seen and thought of around the world. And that's why it's important to also have the disposition to read, learn, see, hear, think objectively. So you get a better sense of our world around us. All right, Spanish. So Jews from Argentina and Central and South American countries have also immigrated to Israel, bringing their native Spanish language into the Holy Land. Spanish makes up a minor of about 1.6% speakers in Israel. So these Jews are predominantly Sephardic, but there are few Ashkenazic, Ashkenazic, forgive me for the pronunciation among them, interested with the descendants of the Jews which were expelled from Spain and Portugal at the end of the 15th century. They have their own dialect of Spanish called the Judeo-Spanish or the Ladino, which is considered a Romantic language. So according to research by the Bar Ilan University, roughly 250,000 people in Israel still know Judeo-Spanish, but only 100,000 speak it fluently. All right, so this was just the end of the Harbin Light. Of course, I would like feedback and like to know what you all think about this episode. All right, so tune in, turn up, and guess what? Take care. Bye-bye for now.